Dear Father, for one more hour, please send your Holy Spirit to be with us. Give us wisdom and give us encouragement and give us the ability to surrender completely. I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let us get started here. That's the title. That's what we're going to be talking about. And what we're going to do is something that I don't normally do, but this time I decided, yes, I'm going to do it. M.L. Andreasen, I did mention his name. If you hear about him, you will hear something negative about him. Just want you to know that. There's very little said positive about M.L. Andreasen because in the 1950s, they were having some discussions with evangelical leaders. When I'm talking about they, the leaders of our church, president on down. And M.L. Andreasen was not invited. Strange, because M.L. Andreasen was probably the leading theologian of the church at that time, 1940s, 1950s. But he was not invited. Another person who was not invited was F.D. Nickel. And there were reasons for non-inviting, because they knew where these people stood, what their issues were, and they were not going to have them involved in discussions about how we were going to be friends with the evangelicals. And so that became the issue. Well, it all happened. The book Questions on Doctrine came out. That has been around. I assume you've seen something about that book, Questions on Doctrine. And it showed that we had changed our teachings on the nature of Christ and the nature of perfection. And so that became an issue for M.L. Andreasen to address. He was a man who was willing to address an issue if he was concerned enough about it. And he sent out something, if you've ever run across letters to the churches. I'm just curious, how many of you have ever heard of letters? One person? Two? Okay, letters. Three? Letters to the churches. He sent out because the brethren did not allow him to come into the discussion plans with these evangelical leaders. And he knew why, and they knew why. So he sent these out for the people, for you to decide. That's what he sent them out for the individuals. So M.L. Andreasen is a leading figure in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, probably the best theologian we had during the 40s and the 1950s, and someone who can really be respected on the issues that we're talking about right now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to see if this will kick in and go from here. Yes, there it is. The Sanctuary Service is a book that he wrote, and believe it or not, you can still get it. I would advise you to get it. The Sanctuary Service is his presentation on all parts of the sanctuary. Right now, 2 copies at the bookstore in Keene. Thank you for that. And so this is now the next to the last chapter that we're going to study this afternoon. And I will read parts of it, and I will make comments as we go along on the whole issue. So here's where we go. The final, putting it up there so you can read it. The final demonstration of what the gospel can do in and for humanity is still in the future. Christ showed the way. He took a human body, and in that body demonstrated the power of God. Men are to follow his example and prove that what God did in Christ, he can do in every human being who submits to him. Do you believe that with all your heart? Remember what he did in Christ. There was not one sin in his entire life. You can't say that, and I can't say that. But from now on, the possibility exists that you and I can come to that experience. I hope you believe that one sentence he can do in every human being who submits to him. The world is awaiting this demonstration. When it has been accomplished, the end will come. God will have fulfilled his plan. He will have shown himself true and Satan a liar. His government will stand, what's the word? Vindicated. That's the job of the Adventist church. We are not here just to save people. That's a side benefit. We are here to vindicate God's name. That's why we are called into existence. The plan of salvation must of necessity include not only forgiveness of sin, but complete restoration. Salvation from sin is more than forgiveness of sin. Forgiveness presupposes sin and is conditioned upon breaking with it. Sanctification is separation from sin and indicates deliverance from its power and victory over it. The first is a means to neutralize the effect of sin. The second is a restoration of power for complete victory. Do you believe, my friends, in complete victory over sin? I don't think you'd be here if you didn't. All right, so you can see the picture. Thus it shall be with the last generation of men living on the earth. And by the way, just that word men. He's writing in the 1940s and 50s when we weren't hung up over that word, because now we say that's generic and it is prejudicial, and we don't want any part of that. The word men has always been not only a male description, but a generic description of mankind. And that's the way he was writing. So keep that in mind. Okay, through them, this generation, God's final demonstration of what he can do with humanity will be given. He will take what? The weakest of the weak. Are you feeling pretty weak? He wants you. Those bearing the sins of their forefathers, and in them show the power of God. They will be subjected to every temptation, but they will not yield. They will demonstrate that it is possible to live without sin, the very demonstration for which the world has been looking and for which God has been preparing. It will become evident to all that the gospel really can save to the uttermost. God has found true in his sayings. And the reason that's important? Satan says to God, oh, I know you forgive sins. I know what you do in heaven. Jesus died for forgiveness of sin. Where are the people that are obedient to you 100% of the time? Take a look around you. How many of those people that you've forgiven of their sins are 100% obedient to you, never again sinning, not even considering the rest of the eternity? Where are the people who have stopped sinning? And this is what it's talking about right in this particular issue that we're dealing with here, the power of God's vindication. Okay? It is in the last generation of men living on the earth that God's power unto sanctification will stand fully revealed. The demonstration of that power, God's power, is God's vindication. It clears him of any and all charges which Satan has placed against him. In the last generation, God is vindicated and Satan defeated. This may need some further amplification. So the rest of this chapter is dealing with that issue. Can there ever be a generation that will live totally obedient to God? I'm skipping along in here and choosing some interesting parts. The demonstration which God intends to make with the last generation on earth means much, both to the people and to God. Can God's law really be kept? That is a vital question. Many deny that it can be done. Others glibly say it can. Stop right there. Are we a little too quick to say the law can be kept? Isn't Satan quick to point out, but they just didn't yesterday, did they? And so where's the evidence that God's law can be kept? Many deny, of course. Others glibly say it can. When the whole question of commandment keeping is considered, the problem assumes large proportions. God's law is exceedingly broad. It takes cognizance of the thoughts and intents of the heart. It judges motives as well as acts, thoughts as well as words. Commandment keeping means entire sanctification, a holy life, unswerving allegiance to right, entire separation from sin, and victory over it. Well may mortal man cry out, who is sufficient for these things? Isn't that what every one of us says? Yet to produce a people that will keep the law is the task which God has set himself and which he expects to accomplish. Notice that, which he expects to accomplish. When the statement and challenge are issued by Satan, no one can keep the law, it's impossible. If there be any that can do it or that have done it, show them to me. Where are they that keep the commandments? I love this. God will quietly answer, here they are. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Won't that be a day when God can say that? Not here are they that intend to, not here are they that want to, not here are they that hopefully will. No, here they are. Take a look at them. They're living on earth right now. They're eating breakfast just like everyone else eats breakfast. These are the ones that will destroy your argument, Satan. Guess I finished that completely. Okay, we're good. That's not right. I've lost the place where I am here. All right. Command. When God commands, where am I? Here we are. When God commands men to keep his law, it does not serve the purpose he has in mind to keep only a few men keep it, just enough to show it can be done. It is not in line with God's character to pick outstanding men of strong purpose and superb training and demonstrate through them what he can do. It is much more in harmony with his plan to make his requirements such that even the weakest need not fail, so that none can ever say that God demands that which can be done by only a few. It is for this reason that God has reserved his greatest demonstration for the last generation. This generation bears the results of accumulated sins. If any are weak, they are. If any suffer from inherited tendencies, they do. If any have an excuse because of weakness of any kind, they have. If therefore these can keep the commandments, there is no excuse for anyone in any other generation not doing so also. And that becomes the issue, isn't it? Not whether or not there can be an Enoch or an Elijah here and there scattered about, but whether a whole generation of average Christians, those who have gone through struggles and failures and successes, can they all be transformed to be living without sin? And remember, who does it? God does it. You can choose to let God do it, and you have to do that. But God does the work that you can't do. All right, let's keep on going here, skipping through a good share of the chapter. God is ready for the challenge. He has bided his time. The supreme exhibition has been reserved until the final contest. Out of the last generation, God will select his chosen ones, not the strong or the mighty, not the honored or rich, not the wise or the learned, but common, ordinary people will God take, and through and by them make his demonstration. Satan has claimed that those who in the past have served God have done so from mercenary motives, that God has pampered them. Do you know of any individual that might have been said about him? Job, you betcha. That was the big argument about Job, personal reasons, and that Satan has not had free access to them. If he were given full permission to press his case, they also would be won over. But he charges that God is afraid to let him do this. Give me a fair chance, Satan says, and I will win out. And so to silence forever Satan's charges, to make it evident that his people are serving him for motives of loyalty and right without reference to reward. Stop right there. Why are you today a Seventh-day Adventist? Why are you today believing these promises? Remember, the issue is without reference to reward. What if, just ponder this a little bit. What if God would come out and talk to us through a vision, through a prophet, whatever, and tell you that, things are not the way that I had hoped that they would be. I'm going to have to let you die, and you will sleep forever. But in the meantime, you will have the best life possible if you obey me. How about that? Would you obey God if it only pertained to this life? And there were no promises. What if the promises had never been given? That you would have eternal life. Would you still live the life that you're living right now in obedience to God? Sometimes we have to ask ourselves that question. What would I do if no rewards were promised and I simply had to trust God to do the best that he could? Anyway, I'm glad we don't have to make that decision. But once in a while, we need to think about it a little bit at least. Am I in it for the freedom from colds, flu, not sleeping enough, or am I in it for Jesus' sake and because I love Jesus? Okay? Once in a while, not often. I keep looking away and then forgetting where I was. Sorry about that. Isn't it nice that we're just a few people here? To clear his own name and character of the charges of injustice and arbitrariness, and to show to angels and men that his law can be kept by the weakest of men Under the most discouraging and most untoward circumstances, God permits Satan in the last generation to try his people to the utmost. They will be threatened, tortured, persecuted. They will stand face to face with death in the issuance of the decree to worship the beast and his image, but they will not yield. They are willing to die rather than to sin. Oh, I want us to have that experience. Willing to die, and we will die before we ever transgress God's law in any way ever again. That's a decision that we have to make. Would we be comfortable with that? Would we be happy with that experience? Will they stand the test? To human eyes, it seems impossible. If only God would come to their rescue, all would be well. They are determined to resist the evil one. If need be, they will die, but they will not sin. Satan has no power and never has had to make any man sin. He can tempt, he can seduce, he can threaten, but he cannot compel. And now God demonstrates to the weakest of the weak that there is no excuse and never has been any for sinning. If men in the last generation can successfully repel Satan's attack, if they can do this with all the odds against them and the sanctuary closed, what excuse is there for men's ever sinning? We do not have to sin, right? The matter of greatest importance in the universe is not, notice carefully, the salvation of men, important as that may seem. The most important thing is the clearing of God's name from the false accusations made by Satan. The controversy is drawing to a close. God is preparing his people for the last great conflict. Satan is also getting ready. The issue is before us and will be decided in the lives of God's people. God is depending upon us as he did upon Job. Is his confidence well placed? It is a wonderful privilege vouchsafed this people to help clear God's name by our testimony. It is wonderful that we are permitted to testify for him. It must never be forgotten, however, that this testimony is a testimony of life, not merely of words. To give people the light is more than to hand them a tract. Our life is the light. As we live, we give light to others. Without life, without our living the light, our words abide alone. But as our life becomes light, our words become effective. It is our life that must testify for God. All this is closely connected with the work of the Day of Atonement. On that day, the people of Israel, having confessed their sins, were completely, what's the word? Cleansed. They had already been forgiven. Now sin was separated from them. They were holy and without blame. The camp of Israel was clean. We are now living in the great antitypical day of the cleansing of the sanctuary. Every sin must be confessed and by faith be sent beforehand to judgment. As the high priest enters into the most holy, so God's people now are to stand face to face with God. They must know that every sin is confessed, that no stain of evil remains. Now the sentence, which summarizes everything he had to say in this chapter. The cleansing of the sanctuary in heaven is dependent upon the cleansing of God's people on earth. How could it be any other way? How could God cleanse his sanctuary in heaven, remove all sin, place them upon the head of Satan, the scapegoat, send him out to the wilderness, and then I have another sin to confess the next day? And you have one 2 days from now. How could this ever end if it was totally dependent on just removing sins from the sanctuary? The reality is, this heart must be cleansed before that sanctuary can be cleansed. It is the cleansing of the heart that is the cleansing of the sanctuary that is talked about on the Day of Atonement. The heart cleansing. Remember, the problem is, Israel had a Day of Atonement how often? Once a year. What happened on the next day, week, month? More sins. More sins. Same old story. So that really doesn't give much encouragement, does it? It's got to be a better cleansing. This time around, it can't be a temporary cleansing. It has to be a permanent cleansing, so you and I can be sure that rebellion will never enter the universe ever again. Cleanse and cleanse. That's right. And cleanse. Yes, sir. See how easy it is to understand? The confession of sin in the sanctuary, bringing the lamb, removes sin from you, but it remains in the sanctuary. Yeah, that's right. Yep, yep. But not without your consent. That's the one area that you provide. You do not provide effort, you don't have that much effort. You do not provide victory, you don't have victory. You can provide a decision. Yes, Lord, cleanse me. That's the one thing we apply. And that's not works. That's a decision of the heart. Eve didn't make that decision. You can. All this. See where we're at now? Oh, I guess we're done. That's it. Ellen White said this in Maranatha, page 249. There must be a purifying of the soul here upon the earth in harmony with Christ's cleansing of the sanctuary in heaven. Let me reread that. There must be a purifying of the soul here on the earth in harmony with Christ's cleansing of the sanctuary in heaven. So that's the basic principle, Maranatha, page 249. And you can take that to the bank. Well, that is a brief summary of the chapter entitled The Last Generation. That is next to the last chapter in the book, The Sanctuary Service. I would encourage you to get that book, remembering this was a man who had not yet gotten involved in the compromises that have been made over the last 50 years. We're talking about major compromises that have been made, and we're still making compromises. This was before that time. This was when a person could stand for the truth and not be expelled from the ministry for it. So just my thought that can be a benefit to you. Now let's see if I put my other things here. I think I did. Or maybe I didn't. I didn't take anything out to the motorhome, did I, Matthew? Don't think so. Nope, that was all Ellen White. And I don't know what I did with the rest of it. All right, so we'll just talk to you. Living in the Day of Atonement. That's what we are. That is our issue. How does that make a difference in the way we function during this period of life in which we live right now? We are still living before the close of probation. We are still living in the time of God's mercy being applied, but we're living so close. Do you realize? I believe, I'll just give you my belief, I believe we could be in the time of trouble in a year or so. There is no reason it couldn't happen right here in this United States. If it doesn't happen, I'll praise the Lord and keep on doing what I'm doing. But if it does happen, we better be ready for it. We'd better have our hearts ready for the experience that's going to come to pass in this time. So there are things that we need to have secure in our lives that need to be changed. What about things like diet? We don't like to talk about diet. It's very personal. We like foods and we don't like foods. That's irrelevant, folks. The question is, what does God ask us to do? Does He ask us personally to give up certain foods and replace them with other foods that are better for us? Is He the master dietitian of the universe? Can He be trusted to tell us the truth about what foods are proper and what foods are totally improper? Just one little thought here. How much animal products will be given up by the 144,000 at the very end of time? That's the word. That's the word. All. It says that so clearly. All who will be living in the time of the atonement will be vegetarian, will be giving up animal products. Do we trust God on that? Yeah, I know it's uncomfortable, especially if we've had a different diet. Do we trust God enough on those things? And then we say, well, I've got it fixed. I don't have to worry anymore. I'm on the right track. Well, how about the statements about sugar and refined foods and all kinds of other things that deteriorate our body's resistance to disease? That's the real issue. What are the foods that God has told us are foods that will destroy our relationship with Him? Those are things that we can study. Those are things we don't have to be guessing at. We can study them from the writings of Ellen White. And don't write off the book Counsels on Diet and Foods as just a compilation. It is a compilation, yes, but well done, carefully done, and I can trust it. All right, let's see. What else should I talk about, Matthew? I'm on my own right now. The family of Jacob. The family of Jacob. Oh my, yes. How about his situation in which he was called to be that representative of God because he had chosen for God, and he was willing to do whatever it took, and he could be right with him and be a witness to his family. Well, how about his family? 12 sons. One son, keep that in mind, one son came to a decision that would last for eternity. Now, we don't know about the others. Some might be in heaven. Who knows? Why not? But one son came to a decision that would protect his whole family from destruction and Satan's lies. One son. And also, as Jacob is fleeing from his lie, as Jacob is trying to find his way, did God come to him in a special way and say, I'm with you, Jacob? Did he say to him, you're on the right track. See that ladder reaching into heaven? That's the way you need to go. God came to help Jacob. Does he come to help us? Does he come to make life easier for us in areas that we are maybe a little uncomfortable with? Why not? Why not? And so now we have the family in Egypt, and Jacob is where? In the court of the superior office, or in jail? Joseph is spending his life in jail. How does he know he'll ever get out of jail? Where's the evidence for that? None. He's there, sent by the wife of his owner. And so he has to spend his time in jail. What does he do in jail? How does he live his life in jail? Does he? Same way he did outside, that's right. And now he becomes the one that they go to when they have a problem with the prison situation. And when some people get imprisoned unjustly, where is Joseph? He's right there. And he says, this is what God showed me about two people, a baker and a butler. And this is how it'll all work out. And then we come to that time of the sons, all of the sons of Jacob. They come to him, and he refuses to let it be easy for them. Isn't that a little bit of the way God deals with us? Does he refuse to make it easy? Because then it would be just, okay, thank you, God, we're on our way. But if we've suffered a little bit in the process of coming back to him, and we have trusted him, but it hasn't worked out exactly as we had hoped, well, those men had to make some tough decisions. And when his oldest brother said, keep me here, I go in prison, not my brother. My brother Benjamin didn't do it, not his fault. I'm responsible for the people of my company. Treat me this way. All of a sudden, Joseph realized a heart had been changed. That wasn't the heart of his older brother. A heart had been changed. And all of a sudden now, he was willing to let himself be imprisoned for something he had nothing to do with. Remember that whole thing of the stolen stuff, that was put there by God. God put that in there to test them. God tests us, folks. We need testing. And he tested those people, and he formulated his plan for them, and he made a change in that whole family. So there was a family that, we think of Jacob as making some very poor choices. I like to think of Jacob as just loving a certain woman, a little too much. Have you noticed that? He loves Rachel. He just loves her. And he is willing to do whatever is necessary to win her heart and live with her for the rest of his life. But what does he do? He tells a lie, remember? Make sure that things would not be inflicted upon him. But not only that, he is going to make sure that no one is going to deter that family from its reason. How many names are going to be on the gates of the New Jerusalem and the foundation? A whole raft of names, including the family of Jacob. So that means that, yeah, we'll see Simeon there. Yeah, even there's one left out. Who is the one that is left out? Does anyone know? Dan, that's right. Apparently the family of Dan had gotten so rebellious that God, what's that? Your husband is Daniel. Well, we won't include them in your scenario. And so, yes, Dan is the one name, and we don't know, again, all the reasons. I'm going to be asking questions in the New Jerusalem. Are you talking about Ephraim? All right, Ephraim. Is Ephraim left out too? Okay. Are there? That indicates something, doesn't it? That God will make correct decisions about who's going to be there. Yes, yes. All right, Matthew, what do I need to talk about now? What's that? Polygamy. Yeah. All right. That's a good point. What about polygamy? Did God bless polygamy? Okay. Did God bless it, though? Did God bless? How about the 12 sons? Their names, except for 2, are going to be in the New Jerusalem. Is that a blessing? All right. So God blessed polygamy in the Old Testament. There was not. But was it God's plan? Was it ever God's plan for his people to live in that relationship? Not one time. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so God didn't leave people just outside and with no help, but he also let them go through the results of their decision. So there we have an argument for why things that were allowable in the Old Testament are not allowable today. Did they eat meat in the Old Testament? Of course they did. Did Abraham offer the visitors to his tent a meat diet? Who was one of those visitors? One of the 3? Jesus. That's right. Jesus. So he offered him meat. All right? So all of that is clear throughout the Old Testament. Now slavery, yeah. Did God also produce blessings from slavery? See, if you were living in the time of Jacob or any of the others, if you were really, well, it's later. It's in the time after Moses. If you were in serious trouble financially, you could not support your family, you could do one thing to survive: sell yourself into slavery. Sell yourself into slavery. For how long? How long could you do that? That's right, 6 years, 6 years of slavery maximum, and then you would be released and made free to make your own decisions. All right, so does that mean that God blesses slavery? If you were to ask anyone in any situation today, I'm talking about the days of our times here in the United States, and they would be sitting in church, and you would be asking them, is it proper for us to keep our slaves in the land that we are responsible for? What would you think their answer would be immediately? No problem. No problem. God ordained slavery. In the Old Testament, you can read it for yourself. Slavery was accepted by God as a principle of his. Therefore, we cannot oppose slavery. Well, we had a whole lot of people in our country believing and teaching that. What did Jesus say about that subject? One wife, one husband, one wife. He made it very clear. So does God allow things that he does not like? Interesting. Does he bless things that he does not like? Why does he do all that? Why does he do that when it should be the other way, that he only blesses things which are in harmony with his will? What's that? Because he loves them, all right. All right. And he understands the time in which they're living. Okay? Yeah. That's right. So he what? Yeah, that's right. Moses, when all the people around the mountain were to be destroyed. Did you remember that story? He asked all who are on the Lord's side, come and stand by me. And then what was his next command? Take your sword in your hand and kill the disobedient ones. Well, I'm glad he hasn't given us that command just yet. And we're told that who will do the killing at the very end of time? Angels. The ones who are given by God the responsibility of making sure that this will not rise up again at the end of time. They are, remember what happened in the time of Hezekiah and the Sennacherib army, in which one night and they were all gone. The Bible kind of rephrases that in an unusual way. And they woke up and they were all gone. Well, that isn't how they woke up. But anyway, you know the story. The others around them woke up and knew they were all gone. So the key point is that God does bless, God does ordain even things like death and even things like disobedience to his will on what we eat because, and I think your word is the best, because he loves us. He trusts us, and he's going to give us chance after chance after chance to get it right. So there we are. We have the opportunity to be part of this plan. What else do I need to talk about, Matthew? Yep. Day of Atonement. Is that a special day? Was it a special day back then? What did they do all that day? Prayed. The word is afflicted their soul. Key phrase. They afflicted their soul. Is that praying pretty desperately? Don't you think that one prayer that came up from the hearts and the minds of every Israelite on the Day of Atonement was, Lord, protect our high priest. He's walking right into your presence. He's just a human being like the rest of us. Don't let him die at your presence, because no one can see you and live. And I'm sure that that prayer was offered. There is even a legend, and I don't play much stock in legends, but that the leg of the high priest was tied with a rope. I don't know if that's why they did it or not. But how do you get him out if he dies in the most holy place? Who's going to go in there and get him? I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds logical. It sounds like a Jewish mind could come up with that pretty easily. It works. It works. So there you have another example of the whole picture of God's mercy, God's tolerance. And now my point is this. Here we are. We are in the Day of Atonement. We are in the day of afflicting our souls. We are in the day preparing for the close of human probation. I want you to hear that. We are in the days to prepare for the close of human probation. Our probation might close next week, next month, next year. We have no idea. And that means at that moment, there will be no more forgiveness of sins. And God is trying to get us strengthened for that experience. Can he do it? Will he do it? He will, and he can. If the Bible record is correct, are you going to trust God's word on this one, or trust what you've experienced on this one? If you trust what you've experienced, you'll never be sure of yourself. Never be sure that you will get through. But somehow, some way, God is going to make you and me living without sin in a time of intense persecution. And we will never sin again. I believe that even extends to sins of not knowing. Sometimes we do things that we don't know for sure is right. Did they have some things like that in the Old Testament? We don't know for sure what the right thing is here. Remember, that's why the high priest had a Urim and a Thummim. What is your will, God? Show us what your will is. Sometimes you just don't know. I believe God is going to reveal to us in his own way things that we don't have any idea that are wrong. That's right. That's right. He doesn't need to answer us if we know the answer. In other words, don't count on your sins being just unknown to you, and you'll make it through. He is going to reveal all that is sinful, and he is going to give you victory over all of it, 100% of the time. Have you noticed that? That standards? Yep. You know, there are things that we have gotten accustomed to. Did they get accustomed to having more than one wife back then? Well, of course, you had to do it. That's the way culture is. You have no other option, they thought. But they were wrong, and it led to disaster in some cases. All the transgender issues, that's right. Because you've noticed very well that when we are in crisis mode, we do things that we wouldn't do otherwise. And, you know, we've been through the last few years. How have you managed to get through these last few years? I trust that you've been faithful to God in your decisions. But remember, other people with other cultures may have different understandings of things than you do. Let God be the judge of that. But again, you understanding as a Seventh-day Adventist God's will and how the whole issue is, can we be totally obedient to God no matter what happens to us? If we understand that, we can survive. So there we have examples of how the Day of Atonement is a special day. I hope you don't do what I'm seeing happening in my beloved Seventh-day Adventist church. Do you hear much anymore about the close of probation? Do you hear it talked about in sermons? Do you hear it presented in little booklets, in papers, in the magazines that we produce? I'm not hearing anything about the close of human probation. Virtually nothing. I am fearful that this is a doctrine that is in severe jeopardy in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That we're coming to a time when we can't do what we have done for all of our lives, and that is say, I'm sorry, Lord, and he forgives me. We are coming to a time when that is no longer an option. And my friends, don't ever see the problem. The problem is that you and I have gotten accustomed to the ways of things and the ways of God. And yes, we know whenever we sin, we can have immediate forgiveness. We know that. But that is going to change. There will come a time soon. My belief, soon. Yes, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. There's coming a time soon when that is no longer an option. Because it is all going to come down to one issue. Who's telling the truth, God or Satan? Satan says you can't obey completely because you have a fallen nature and a history of sinning. God says you can obey because I will place my power in you and you don't have to sin again ever because I will give you my power. I have given you the example of Enoch. I have given you the example of Elijah. There will be a whole generation of those people living at the end of time. Study their lives carefully. That's what God is telling you. Don't lose track of the close of probation. You and I could and should be in that generation. It could be us. And we need to be ready for it. Not just hoping, not just wishing. So that's why we do some things that are a little differently. Remember, living in the Day of Atonement. We're living in the time of atonement process, the final atonement, the final aspect of Jesus' atoning grace. We're living in that time. And we've got to come to the point where we're saying, whatever you want to do with me, God, I'm done doing for myself. If you want to make me a sinless human being, I'm going to trust you on it, that you can do that. And I will allow you to do whatever is necessary in my life. Take every bit of my life out of its normal pattern and live for me 100%. Have I covered everything, Matthew? I think I have. It's nice to have someone around who has heard all your presentations. Once in a while, sometimes papers get lost. One little thing. Have you noticed that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is about the only religious group that is saying there's anything wrong with liquor use on a regular, now we're not talking about addiction, we're talking about regular enjoyment of life. In every presentation that you make, I don't care if you're listening to a baseball game, if you're watching a pageant or anything else, you're going to hear about liquor use. The most dangerous, the most seductive, much more, I think, than tobacco use. Now, that's my judgment. And so I think that there's an area in which we as Seventh-day Adventists need to have a louder voice, that we need to speak for God. Yes? Was what? Was good for you? All right. Here's what that little myth is all about. Alcohol use has been said to help us avoid heart attacks. Alcohol use has been said to eliminate some of these issues. We're finding out now that some of those surveys that were done were not done totally objectively, but that's another issue. The real, the surveyors were drunk. There you go. The real issue in this is, yes, there is something about the grape that is healing. Have you noticed that? There is something about the grape that does help the system. So wine is the product of the grape, therefore it has to be okay and good for you. Well, here's the problem. Yeah, you might get some little benefits from the use of wine for your heart. Possible. But how about all those other issues that come along with it? Mental issues, social issues. Yeah. All of these things that come along with the benefit for wine usage. And that becomes the real issue. What's that? That's right. That's the point. That's the whole point here. If it comes from the grape, let's go back to the grape. Because in addition to the benefits you'd get from grape juice, maybe you go directly to the grape and you get fiber too. More benefits. Right. It's allowed in the Bible. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's right. If we can do one thing, and that's, he mentioned it very clearly, always ask for the highest level of obedience to God, whatever it is. Always ask for power for that. Don't say, Lord, can I get away with this and still be saved? And we don't say it that way, but we think that way, don't we? Is it okay for me to lose my temper just once a month? Is that okay? Is it all right? Well, one day it's not going to be allowed ever again for eternity for you to lose your temper with your kids. Wow. That means we need to be preparing for that right now. Yes. Hey, there you've got it. All right. You know, when I step into heaven and walk up to that table, you've read about the table, right? But you can't see the end of it. It's so long, filled with all sorts of good things. Am I going to walk up to that table and say, where's the good stuff? That's not what I fix at home. I've never eaten that in my life. Where's the good stuff? Where's the beef? Remember that commercial? Where is the good stuff? I want to be able to walk into heaven and say, this is the best I have ever seen in my life. We had things like this on earth, but they didn't come close to what I'm seeing right now. Lay it on, Lord. I want everything you can provide for me, and not be in a culture shock in heaven. There will be people, a lot of people, in culture shock in heaven. But God has seen that they are teachable. Keep that in mind. God has seen that they are repentant. God has seen that there is hope. Culture shock, good point. We want to be beyond any culture shock. Okay, yes. Yep. There you are. Yep. Yep. Sure there are. That's right. That's exactly what's happening. Isn't there a text in the Bible that says, be angry and sin not? You don't have to be angry. Jesus got angry when he saw mistreatment of others, and especially the way the Pharisees acted. He got angry at them. There are texts in the Bible on that. But that is not loss of temper. Don't ever confuse righteous anger with loss of temper. Loss of temper is you losing control and you saying things that you have to say, Lord, please forgive me, Lord. I dishonored you. Yeah. Yeah. And remember, there are differences always with understanding and knowledge. God always looks at that. What knowledge do we have? Or are you talking about Moses now or Joseph? Moses got angry with the slave. All right, that's what I thought. Yeah, because Moses, remember, Moses got angry, legitimately angry, and that anger led him to do something which God had forbidden, because he took another person's life without cause. Not without cause, no, you know, he had a reason, but without justification. He took the life of another person. And how long did he have to live a different kind of life to get over that life? 40 years, that's right. Yes. Ah, yes, there we are. And Samson. At this point, you come to Samson's life, and remember, he is a chosen child. He comes under the Nazirite vow. His parents dedicate him to the Lord for the rest of his life, and that didn't work out so well. He did not continue to be faithful. He defied God's will. He was taken prisoner, and now he was helpless. Because again, how did he become prisoner? By not believing in God. God said, you are not to shave your head. And what did he allow Delilah to do? Exactly right. So Samson was paying a steep price for not doing God's will in God's way. Now he comes to the end of his life. How is he going to defend the truth of God against the evils that he's been experiencing all during his life, the corruption that the Philistine world had brought upon all of his countrymen. How is he going to resolve that? Now, God could have given him, couldn't he, the ability to kill the Philistines, every one of them? God could have given him that ability. The jawbone of an ass, remember that? And so God could have given him survival issues. God chose not to do that because God knew that Samson's repentance, first of all, was genuine. I'm expecting to see him in heaven. And second, that it was the only way that he could see that he could do anything for God at the end of his life. He was going to give his life into God's hands. Now, when he took hold of those pillars, I don't know, remember his hair had been growing, I don't know if he knew he had strength back. I don't know. He might have thought, yeah, my strength is coming back. I'm feeling a little better. But I don't know that. As far as I know, there's no evidence. And so he was simply saying to God, use me in the last moment of my life to destroy the enemies that you've told us to destroy so we can have a free country. Use me to do it in any way that will honor your name. So he goes up there, takes a hold of those pillars, and suddenly, that's my guess, the strength comes back. And the pillars are collapsing, and he has destroyed them. So, was Samson justified in doing it that way? I trust so. Was Samson happy in doing it that way? I doubt it. I doubt it. Was this something that God would say, everyone around you, take heart, this is how you're going to defeat your enemies from now on, this is the way I'm going to deal with things? No. This is a very abnormal, unusual way for God to destroy his enemies. And Samson, he had lived his life in rebellion, and God says, I'll give you the end of your life in surrender and obedience. For you, it works. For you and me, it doesn't work that way. We are not to be told to go out and destroy our enemies. I am so glad I have never been given the command that was given to the followers of Moses. Take your sword in your hand and kill the unfaithful Adventist that you can. Wouldn't that be an awful thing for us? And God says, no, you can't handle that. I won't even begin to ask you that. That was special for that time and for that purpose. There are some things like that in the Bible, which you just have to realize God chose it for that reason, for that purpose, one time. I think that's Samson. All right, ready to pray and go home? Yeah, the attitude. Yeah. Now, I really didn't mean to say we go home. You know what's coming up last in this program that we have been presenting all day long? No? That's right. Matthew is coming up last, is what it is. And you have heard Matthew before, 1 year ago, and he talked about the animals. And Matthew, what are you going to do this time?
All right, I just wanted to give a little bit of an idea of what we'll be doing the rest of the time. We're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll get started at 6 o'clock, and we'll be going until sundown. We'll be talking about the natural world and the animals that you've never heard of, and those perhaps you have, but perhaps don't know how special they are. So we'll be looking at those animals that each show something extraordinary about God and the ways that they have been built and put together. And so we'll be doing that to finish out the Sabbath. And it'll all be on the screen and with pictures. Just like last year, however, we have one problem. We don't do this live stream, so anybody at home, please come and join us. You have a half an hour to get here, so please come and spend your Vesper evening with us. It will not be live streamed, so come on out and spend your time with us here. So this is the way to do it. And we will be finished at sundown, and then we'll have our materials available afterwards.
Is there something you're going to give them?
At the end of our meeting, we'll be giving a copy of my book to everybody, as well as our free gift to you. So please, don't leave early. You want to get that as well. And that is a book that I've written and rewritten. It's in its second edition at this point. It's a fairly new version that has been expanded on the original one. And so it's the in-depth on the issue of animals that God has created and what he asks of us in caring for them as part of his creation. And so that's what the book is dealing with. It's called Animals, Ethics, and Christianity. I do have one question before we finish up, and this is a new subject, but I just wanted to ask this, and if nobody has heard about this, and perhaps nobody has, we'll move on, but I just wanted to bring this up in case this is an issue, in case this is something that has been coming up with the very near eclipse. Has anyone here been hearing the rumors that have been going around certain areas of Adventism that Nashville will be destroyed soon after the eclipse?
One.
Yeah.
Nashville, the city of
The
Nashville.
city of Nashville in Tennessee.
You
All right,
heard
so
that?
as that one person has heard about that, nobody else has really heard about that. You may be running into this as time goes on, because this is something that has been spreading in certain areas and among certain groups, is becoming very prominent as a teaching right now that is going to happen. So I just wanted to give a little idea of what's the issue here and how to avoid the pitfalls that are involved in this, because this is an issue right now among certain people which is very important to them, and you need to be able to know how to address it if it is brought up to you.
So, Matthew, how will we address it?
Well, so this is what the original, basically where it started, the background of this. Right now, the eclipse is happening. The first one in 6.5 years since it last crossed America. It has been rounded up to 7 years, and 7 years is a significant number amongst Christians. Obviously, 7 years, 7 is a very important number. And so evangelical Christians, a certain segment of evangelical Christians
Keep that in mind. This is coming from evangelical Christians outside of Adventism.
Nothing to do with Adventism. This is outside Adventism entirely, and amongst a certain segment of evangelical Christians. Not all of them by any stretch, but a certain segment has been promoting ideas on the internet, basically saying that because of the way that the eclipse path is crossing the other eclipse path, and it's forming a cross, the two paths form a cross across America, and a bunch of numbers and a bunch of weird ideas about what cities it's passing over, and it's passing over cities named Nineveh and things like that. They've come up with a whole theory that basically 40 days after the eclipse, there will be a rapture. And it's going to be the big one, where everybody is sucked up to heaven, and the rest of us poor saps will be stuck here in the misery and pain until everything happens. So this is going to be the rapture according to certain, evangelical groups. So that's been the evangelical version of this, and it's going around the conspiracy theory circles and all that sort of thing. Within the last few weeks, a series of videos have been put out from Adventism, from a certain segment of Adventism, that is promoting the idea that is a slight variation of this. It's not dealing with the rapture, they're saying, they're not saying anything like that. But basically what they're saying is that the city of Nashville, Tennessee will be destroyed at some point after this eclipse.
Based on some of Ellen White's predictions.
And then they use an Ellen White quotation where she is traveling through the city of Nashville in one of her southern, journeys, and she's staying in the city. And she says, she had a vision that night looking out the window, where she said, while in Nashville, I had a vision in the night that I saw looking out the window, the cities being destroyed, and a fireball destroying the buildings and this sort of thing. And so then because of that quotation, now it is being taken to say that Nashville will be destroyed in a special, event, and they're not going to be they're not specific about whether it's an asteroid or a volcano or terrorist attack or whatever. They're coming up with there are various different options as to what would be the destructive agent, but they're basically saying Nashville will be destroyed sometime soon. And they're not giving a 40-day, but they're giving sometime soon Nashville will be destroyed. Here's the problem with that, besides what you're obvious. I see a lot of head shaking, and that's good, because this is obviously not useful truth. But here's the problem with that. She had the exact same vision in many places that she visited, in many cities that she visited. She describes these visions multiple times where she saw cities being destroyed.
New York.
And various different things.
Loma Linda,
and all. She describes a number of different situations where she was receiving visions of various different city destructions. The Nashville vision, she just happens to casually mentioned, while traveling through Nashville, I had this vision. It wasn't about Nashville. It was about the end of time. It was about destruction. It was about the end time events, which are going to destroy all these cities in one form or another. All of these cities are going to be destroyed at some point, and these final plagues or leading up to it, there's going to be a lot of these different things, and it's come from many different reasons. Whatever is going to destroy them, it's going to happen, and it's going to be part of the real end time disasters that are leading up to this second coming. But there's nothing special about Nashville, and there's nothing, ahead of the rest that it's going to get destroyed early, because it's more wicked than anything else. It's nothing that is like that. Just a second. And so it's like that is the first problem dealing with this whole thing, is that it's pinning it onto a single city, Nashville, just because she happens to casually mention the name in that context. Yes, they do. There's nothing. Yes, that's right. So there's definitely wickedness
Yeah,
in
they have the largest what?
idol. They have a Parthenon, a replica, and they have various different things that are symbols of paganism. It's a what? I don't remember exactly. I know they have a Parthenon. I know they have a Parthenon there, and so I mean, but I mean, you go to Las Vegas and you get some of the gigantic. That's right. And that's right. So here's the thing. The wickedness of Nashville is there. There's no question. But the wickedness of many cities is there.
Yeah.
I mean, New York City, Los Angeles, whatever. The other thing that was stated is basically it's a high-profile slavery center. A human trafficking center. And a statistic was given. It's one of the top 20 states for human trafficking. It's like, okay, well, that's true, but that means there's at least 15 or more states that are worse than that. And so are they going to get destroyed too? So, this is kind of, a little bit of shoddy, Bible reasoning to try and get this, to try and force this into saying that Nashville is so wicked that it'll be destroyed first in whatever form that's going to happen. So here's what we need to deal with. These are a lot of speculations. These are a lot of theories, a lot of different things, and they're trying to use Ellen White to say that it will therefore happen, and then they're tying it into the eclipse, which has nothing to do with Ellen White's visions.
Yeah.
That's the other issue. The eclipse issue is completely from the evangelicals. That's the evangelical idea that the eclipse will lead to the rapture. And so we're taking this now, the eclipse will lead to Nashville being destroyed. There's no connection between Nashville or any other city being destroyed and the eclipse. There's no vision in any way dealing with that. And so that's the biggest problem with this, is that we're tying it now to a date type of situation, an event, and making it something else. So that's something you just need to be aware of. That's why we're bringing it up here. We just want you to know where it's coming from and what the big background picture is, and we can all think about it and have our opinions about these things and whatever. But don't get sucked into the idea of making predictions that won't come true, because that hurts our ministry. That hurts our witness. That hurts us, and especially when we drag Ellen White into it and say she has made a prophecy that Nashville will be destroyed, and it's going to happen after the eclipse. And then when nothing happens, then everyone who would even peripherally listen to this is going to say, well, she's just as crazy as every other, Joseph Smith, whatever type of prophet. She doesn't know anything about anything, and she's making up stuff, and we're not going to have to listen to her because she's a wacko. That's where this leads. It destroys her ability, her credibility, in order to be able to make predictions like this, which are not stable.
Wasn't there another prophecy made a few years back about Nashville being destroyed at a specific time?
Yes, there was. It was a date-specific prophecy that was basically saying that a terrorist attack would take place in Nashville, and this was like 6 years ago. I forget exactly the date, but it was going around as well, that Nashville would be the target of terrorist activity and would be destroyed, and of course nothing happened.
And the ministry of that person has almost disappeared.
The ministry of the main person promoting that theory, that was kind of like the nail in his coffin. He had been dwindling a little bit, and then he made this date-sensitive prediction, and pretty much everyone has ignored him since then as a false predictor, and rightly so. So this can be very damaging to those who make these predictions as well as to us in general,
Yep.
because we get dragged down with, the rest of them because, oh, you weird Adventists making up stuff. And so, yeah. No, it's not so much a group as an organization group. It's not like the Southern Baptists or something like this. This is more just internet type predictions where everybody is doing their own thing and making up their own stuff. But the ones doing this are basically all evangelical rapture type people. And I looked through, I don't like to waste my time on stuff like this. It's like I don't. We watched the part of the video, and then I went to some of the evangelical websites just to see what they were saying, and reading through all their proofs of why it would be so, it was pretty silly. It was the kind of reasoning as to why this was going to happen and why it was the eclipse matters and all this kind of stuff. It was pretty shallow type reasoning, but it wasn't anybody specific like a high profile name per se. It was just, however, now I'll take that back. There is a high profile name attached to it who, I just found this out this week, has been apparently promoting this directly or indirectly. I can't say for sure, but I know he has been promoting it, and that's Alex Jones, the InfoWars guy. He has been promoting this as
Yeah,
part
who?
of the...
Tell them who that is.
Yeah, it's a guy who, if you haven't heard of him, he's talked a lot about various different things as being hoaxes, like the Sandy Hook shooting and various different things. He's made a lot of claims over the years about certain issues, and he's all into the.
Yeah.
He's totally he's barely religious. I mean, he's just basically a political, a radio internet guy, and he's been sued for his statements, and he's been found guilty for slander and that kind of stuff. So he's had a lot of different issues with but he's been a person who has actually promoted this rapture ideas as well, even though he's not he wouldn't be considered a regular evangelical Christian, but he is a Christian. Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Did-
Yeah.
Did he make it 6 years ago?
Well, no, the one about the Nashville terrorist attack. It was like six. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. The one who made the terrorist attack
Yeah.
prediction was an Adventist who's centered down in the southeastern United States. So. Yes. Should I say who is doing it at this
You
point?
might as well. He has made his claim openly.
Okay, so this is basically a couple of guys, and I don't know them. I've never seen them before, so I can't tell you their names right now, but it's been on Amazing Discoveries, which is Walter Veith's, TV station. Okay? They didn't make a time prophecy. Yes. Yes. Well, she made a prediction about a destruction of cities that she witnessed while she was traveling through Nashville. She didn't say this is exactly going to happen in Nashville. She said, while traveling in Nashville, I had this vision. She had the same vision elsewhere in other cities where she didn't. No, they did not. No, they did not. They have not made a time section to this. They have not made a time prediction. They've just said Nashville will be destroyed. That's what they have claimed. No, they have not given a time prophecy, but they've made the only statement they have made is that this will lead to Nashville's destruction. And it's tying it to the eclipse because they're basically saying, yes. Well, you see, the reason we found out about it is because somebody contacted us and told us that Amazing Discoveries is predicting that the eclipse will lead to Nashville's destruction. So whether or not they're saying that or not, that's the impression that is being given. That's the impression that people are having by watching this and talking about it. And so that's where we're trying to say, we're not trying to attack this as a complete worthless garbage. We're saying you have to be very careful and you have to be ready to understand what is happening when you hear somebody say things like this and where it's coming from in order to be able to deal with the issues involved in the big picture here. And so, yeah, no, the prediction about the Nashville terrorist attack happened, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, and it was made by an Adventist minister who I really haven't heard of since. Yes,
Yep.
yes. Oh, that's exactly right.
Have you noticed, remember back when eclipses scared people half to death around the world? People were attacking missionaries, and all of a sudden an eclipse would happen and they would run for their lives. Eclipses have always been a mystery for people. We're talking about throughout time. And here we are in the most advanced situation in which we can ever be put with knowledge available, and we are sucked into the same thing right now. That's pretty amazing to me.
It's old paganism being revived in our modern civilized era because we see something in the sky happening and we get scared.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. No.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
True.
See, now that's a
that's always been
biological
true.
issue. And then,
Yeah.
I was actually in an eclipse in Washington State. That was the big one in 2017, and it was not total there, it was partial. And we were on a shore of a lake, and when the eclipse happened, out of the water came little tiny baby frogs that were not ready to come out of the water yet. They still had their tail, they barely had legs, and they were crawling up onto the shore out of the water. And that was not normal. And they were doing it during the eclipse. So it's like it affects animals because they're set on time schedules and daylight, darkness, cold, all that kind of stuff. And when things go out of whack, the animals react to it. And that is totally true.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
You-
Yes. Yes.
yeah. Yep. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Everybody is looking for answers, and so everybody is grasping for whatever answer they can find, whether it makes sense or not. They're trying to find an answer. Yes. Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Who's first? Yeah. Okay, so in a United States map, basically the original eclipse from 2017 started up in Oregon and basically came on a southeasterly direction down to southeastern America and went across. Now this eclipse is starting down in Mexico, coming up across Texas and ending up in the New England area of Maine. And so basically the two paths where they intersect is southern Illinois. And so they're saying basically it's a cross symbol. Well, every eclipse that's ever gone somewhere has crossed another path of another eclipse. That's nothing special, and they're saying things like it's crossing the path of 8 towns called Nineveh. And so therefore we need to go back to the prophecy of Jonah for
And
Nineveh.
one called Jonah.
And one called Jonah,
Yeah.
and things like that. And so somebody, now I haven't fact checked this either direction. Somebody then went and said, okay, so we've checked the path of the eclipse, and it's going over 2 cities named Nineveh, and there's a total of 6 cities in America named Nineveh. So how it's going over 8 cities in its path is a bit of a mystery in and of itself, but I don't know the accuracy of that, so I don't know. But anyway, that was one of the reasonings as to why this matters. Yes.
Over there.
Yes.
Signs and wonders.
We have been told by Ellen White that but there is a statement by Ellen White, and I can't give you the reference right now, but she said the signs of the end were finished in terms of leading up to the 1844 time period. And so, those, the darkening of the moon and the falling of the stars and the various things like that, everything is basically general after that. So, yeah, I mean, we do have eclipses now. We also have wars, and we have earthquakes, and we have natural disasters. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Right.
Exactly. That's right. I know, exactly. And so you're right. And so this is something that, because all of these things have been and are, historically signs of God's coming, everybody is looking for the next one and looking for the next, big event. So anyway, I just want to share that for anybody who may run into that. All right, so I'm going to take, okay, we're now at almost 6 o'clock. I will be, get my stuff, and I'll be right back, and we'll be started as soon after 6 as possible, and we will finish up our meetings.